Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarini Teen Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. This is a VR to a tag by Tarot is Magic, and the tag is called Let's Be Tarot Friends. And this is one that just caught my attention because I think I am far from alone in having, at least in part, started making Tarotube content in order to make tarot friends. So, I am happy to participate in this tag. I will link the original video below and I will timestamp my answers as well with the prompts. Okay, getting just straight into it. Shortest introduction ever. Here we go. Question number 1 is what type of art are you looking for in a deck? I think that anyone who watches my channel will know that my art taste is pretty wide ranging. I don't really have any particular medium that is the one that I look for example. I have decks that are photography based, that are paintings, that are drawings, that are black and white or limited color palette or full color, really all over the place in terms of what art kind of speaks to me, I guess. But in terms of a type of art in tarot that I'm looking for art that brings some new kind of angle to the cards, that makes me think, that pushes my interpretation in new directions, that intrigues me, and that I like looking at, obviously. I want art that is cohesive. I do tend to struggle with like collaborative multi-artist decks. I like them kind of conceptually more than I tend to like them in practice. There's only a few that I've been really drawn to because I like to feel like a tarot deck is, a cohesive whole. So that's important to me in the type of art that I'm looking for. And I'm looking for art that is done by a human, which is a weird thing to feel like I need to say, but at this point, with the proliferation of AI decks, which I will not purchase, I feel like it's worth mentioning. Uh, One of the important concepts in Druidry is Awen, this kind of creative inspiration of bards and of artists, and having that Awen of a creator, expressed in their work, tarot is so much an artistic work, is important to me. That's what I'm looking for in art. Question number 2 is what do you search for in a deck? So in answering this question, I'm setting aside the content of the first answer, in terms of kinds of art that I like, and other things that I search for in a deck besides that. I would say at this point, look for decks that have some eco-friendly aspect in their production. This is not to say that I only buy decks, with that, but definitely if a deck has, for example, plastic-free packaging or has, eco-friendly paper or inks that are being used, things like that, that will definitely catch my attention and it is something that I search for and prioritize. I look for decks with meaningful representation, I would say. If a deck has humans in it, I want to see, the humans that comprise the human population depicted there, right? I'm looking for diversity. I'm also looking for representation that doesn't fall into things like tokenism or stereotyping or gender essentialism or things like that, right? So I'm looking for representation that feels good and that feels um, accurate, and respectful. I also search for decks that I feel like would maybe fit into my collection well, by which I mean I do think about things like whether a particular deck that I'm looking at might pair well with oracle decks that I already have, whether a particular deck would be a really kind of multi-purpose deck for me, or whether I'm looking at it as one that I would use in a very specific way, whether a deck appeals to me because I might think it's one that a lot of queerants might like if I'm looking for a deck to read with for other people, right? So that's that's a really kind of vague and nebulous thing to say that I search for in a deck, but I search for a deck that I think would fit into my collection in a way that makes sense to me. Uh, I'm sure we all do this to varying degrees and in different ways with different criteria, but I definitely think about the collection that I have when I'm looking at decks that I don't have that I might like to add, right? Okay. The next question is, what deck are you most intrigued by now and why? I've bought one tarot deck in 2024 so far only, and I would say that that's the one that I'm most intrigued by, and that's the Forest Lore Tarot by Valeda Oracle. The box looks like this. This is, I believe, not available anymore. This deck intrigues me the most in part because it's the deck in my collection that I've used the least because it's new to me. So I'm the most curious about it. And it has pairings of trees with the major arcana, birds with the air suit of swords, water dwellers or creatures that live near the water for cups, and it has mammals for pentacles, and it has insects for wands. So this I find intriguing because I could tell looking at this deck, and what drew me to this deck is that this is a very deliberately thought out, well designed deck, down to the details of including, the seed and the leaves of the different plants that are depicted. The book is quite substantial. I think it's here. Yeah, the book is quite large, and I could tell by looking at this deck online that the creator is familiar with Ogham, which is a system of divination that I read with based on how the trees and the majors are paired up. I could tell that there's research and knowledge and understanding that went into this. And these kinds of animal to tarot pairing type decks can be a struggle for me if the pairings don't make sense to me. Obviously, we all have, you know, different associations and relationships with different species and things like this. But if something feels, and I'm not saying that there's one thing that squirrel means, so it should be on this card all the time. Like, of course not. But if the pairings don't make any sense to me intuitively based on how I relate to what's being depicted, then I find the reading experience really disjointed, right? So these felt very clear to me when I looked at them. Like this, the pairings here throughout this deck make complete and total sense to me. So I'm intrigued by the guidebook. I'm intrigued by how this is going to read for me because so far I've just been kind of admiring it. So that's the one that I'm intrigued by. Next question is there a card in a deck that you always check out first and why? I would say that there is not one specific one. I do like to look at the Moon and the Seven of Swords because these are cards that I don't like when they're depicted in a way that skews very strongly negative. I don't like I don't like that. I also tend to look at, I would say, the Empress, the Emperor, the Hierophant. These are depictions that I can struggle with. So I like to look at them because it can give me a sense of whether I'm going to find the deck inclusive, how these cards are handled, because they're not always handled in ways that I feel like are particularly um, thoughtful, we'll say. They're hard archetypes to relate to, I think, for a lot of us in some ways, and some depictions can be really off-putting for me. So I do like to look at those. But I will say, increasingly, I want to see an entire deck. I want to check out an entire deck before I buy it in as much as possible at this point. Um, I just don't want any negative surprises. I don't want to be surprised by something that I find really off-putting or really problematic in some way. So before I buy a deck, I do like to, if I can, I like to see the whole thing. Obviously, with something like a Kickstarter or a deck that's in progress, that's not always possible. And try to use my discernment in those cases, but I do like to check out all the cards. This relates to the next question, actually. The next question is, if there is one card in the deck you really don't like, would you not buy it and or would you pass the deck along? For me, this entirely depends on the level of really don't like and what is intended by really don't like. If I just don't think a particular depiction aligns with how I read a particular card, I can probably live with that and work with that and learn from that, actually. I feel like unless I make a tarot deck myself, you know, no deck is going to 100% depict every card exactly as I think about it, right? So that is not something that's going to make me not buy a deck. If I find a card so horribly off-putting that if I drew it, I would have a bad experience, like whether that's just really, really hating the artwork or then I probably won't buy the deck. If I find a particular card like harmful in terms of its depiction, in some way being like oppressive or discriminatory or something like that, then certainly I wouldn't buy the deck. And also I wouldn't pass it along either, because why would I inflict that on somebody else, right? I I wouldn't. So that could be something that I definitely wouldn't want to have in my collection based on a single card. There are decks that I have chosen not to buy based on a single card, for sure. Um, but if it's just a matter of, oh, this card isn't really my favorite, then that's okay in a lot of cases. Next question. What is your favorite or least favorite card in tarot and why? For me, I think favorite and least favorite card are very deck specific. I wouldn't say that I have one favorite card that's just my favorite across the tarot in general. I have particular affinity for the moon card because I'm a Pisces, but um, I think that for me, a lot of what I like about tarot and why tarot works for me and why it's a divination modality that I am attracted to and have stuck with for so long is because of the system of majors and minors and the system of suits. So it's hard to pick a favorite or a least favorite in that sense, because to me, the way that the whole tarot system hangs together is important. Like there's no least favorite card that I just wish wasn't there, for example, right? Um, I tend to like divinatory systems with strong systems. Like oracle cards can be a challenge for me for this reason, because they can have no real rhyme or reason or system to them, and I have to figure out how to work with them then. I tend to gravitate towards things like tarot, geomancy, you know, dice, dominoes, things that are quite structured. So the tarot structure is so much of what I like that picking a favorite and least favorite is hard. I would say that there are certain cards that I tend to find the representations more or less challenging. Like I'd say like the star card like tends to be beautiful. Um the um the world card I often find really beautiful. The Six of Swords is a minor that I'm very attracted to, that I often find very beautiful. But it's hard to pick a favorite. I'm not good with favorites. If you've ever watched my channel, you know this. If it's pick 5 favorites, I'll pick like 37. This is usually how it goes, right? The next question, what do people close to you feel about tarot and you doing it? I would say that everybody in my life feels neutral to positive. I would not have people close to me who didn't. My partner is not interested in tarot really, but is interested in art and is an artist and has a background in art, so will enjoy looking at decks, from an artistic standpoint. And Chris definitely has, decks in my collection that are like, oh, that's the kind of art I like, or this art is really impressive or beautiful or interesting. but has no interest in reading tarot or having tarot readings, really. I have read for Chris, but not often. My parents don't read tarot. They're not interested. They're not interested in having readings either. My mom will come to metaphysical shops with me and look at things and find them interesting, but they're not practitioners in any way. My brother, same thing, zero interest. He likes coming to metaphysical shops because my brother likes like incense and things like that, so he'll come and look. My sister is an artist, uh, and she has been definitely badgered by multiple people in her life to do a deck. She's done a lot of custom artwork like tattoo art and skateboard decks and things like that for people, and I think she would make a really amazing tarot deck, but she doesn't know anything about tarot really. So that would have to be a partnership project that I would love to do someday if she would be interested in that. My friends, some of them have their own tarot decks, some of them read tarot for themselves, some of them like getting tarot readings from me. Some are not interested at all. I would say across the board that they have a positive view of tarot in terms of like something that is good for me in my life, and certainly don't have any negative feelings about it. If somebody I was friends with was like really down on it or really anti tarot in some way, like we wouldn't be friends. I don't think so. I feel lucky to have people around me who are really supportive in that way. I know that it's not something that I can take for granted or that everybody has. Certainly, there are members of my extended family that would definitely look down on any kind of divination, that would look down on any kind of pagan practice, certainly, like, would be very opposed, like, for religious reasons. But those are extended family members that I don't have relationships with really, like for other reasons that, they also don't approve of other aspects of my life either. We certainly don't see eye to eye on other things. So like those are not people who I would say I'm close to, you know. Um, being biologically related doesn't make you close in my mind anyway. The next question is, how do you feel about the esoteric stuff in tarot? Uh, I am studying astrology right now. I'm very interested in astrology. I made astrology part of my curriculum that we get to kind of self-design as a apprentice in the AODA, Ancient Order of Druids in America. So I'm studying astrology quite kind of deliberately and fairly intensively, making lots of notes and things like this, but I'm not doing that in relation to tarot. I am interested in learning astrology as its own thing, you know. I don't read tarot with correspondences. I definitely have things that overlap in terms of my understanding of the water suit of cups and my understanding of water signs, for example, like clearly have something in common and have some degree of kind of mutually informing each other. But I don't really read astrology correspondences and tarot at all. I do use tarot in the context of things like new moon intention setting or rituals related to particular transits or particular moon phases and things like that. So in that way, those things come together for me. Numerology definitely figures into my readings, particularly with pip decks or Marseille decks. Numerology and element correspondence figure in quite strongly. Kabbalah, I've never studied. Um, I can't see myself ever studying in my mind and in what I've learned about it. It is absolutely inextricable from Judaism. If I was going to read something about the history of Kabbalah, I would not be doing that through a, a tarot deck. I wouldn't. So that's how I feel about that. Related question in a way. RWS, Thoth, Marseille, and why? Like which or um, how many of these do you work with? Um, the first deck I ever got, I'll show you, is the Jonathan D. Tarot Pack. I've had this for over 20 years at this point, and it is a weird deck. It has some minors that are very pippish, and Marseille inflected. But then others kind of have this Smith Waite kind of nod in them, particularly the wands. This is a very strange deck to start with, I will say. So that's that's how my tarot journey started, was in a Marseille Waite-Smith hybrid area. The first system I studied intensively and deliberately as a kind of tarot tradition, it was Rider-Waite-Smith. I felt like this made sense as a place to kind of start, in that so many decks are influenced by the Smith-Waite, so many decks are based on the Smith-Waite, and there's also lots of books and other kinds of resources related to it. I feel at home in the Smith-Waite system. It's where I started. It's what I've spent the most time with, um, and most of my adult life with. So that's the home base, I guess. Um, I am interested in Marseille. I've spent some time reading about Marseille. I've done a bit of Marseille study. I would like to do more. I like pip decks a lot. I like the neutrality of pippish minors. I'm interested in tarot history, so like Marseille decks are interesting in that way. And I've recently, finally found some Marseille decks that I really like. The Marseille Pontrevie, the Tarot Sirène, the Mermaid deck, and the Gay Marseille I backed on Kickstarter, which is Charlie Claire Burgess's deck's coming out. It should be shipping like any day now. So Marseille, absolutely. Thoth I've never worked with. I don't study. I have no intention of working with, mainly because I feel like learning Thoth would mean engaging with and reading Crowley, and I have absolutely zero interest in reading work by somebody who felt the way that he did about so many religious and racial groups and women, horrifying, like horrifying stuff. I have so many books that I want to read. No, thank you. No, thank you to Thoth. Um, for that reason, I'm not gonna engage with Crowley, and I'm not gonna make someone like that an influence on my spiritual practice. Thank you very much. What are your thoughts on cardstock? Is the next question. I like a lot of different kinds of cardstock. I like matte, I like linen, I like smooth, like superior smooth on make playing cards. I like fine. I like the linen that's really textured. This is Tarot of the Crystal World. You can probably see that linen texture there. This is really nice. Um, it's like a good thickness, a good sturdiness to a cardstock. I don't like really, really glossy cardstock because it's sticky. I don't like cardstock that's really clumpy, clumpy, sticky. Um, I don't like this really bendy, like, I cherish it because it's my first deck, but it feels like printer paper. Don't like that. Uh, but there's lots of cardstocks that I'm open to and fine with. I like the US Games cardstock on things like the Deviant Moon and the Dreaming Way. Like that works well for me. I like make playing cards, linen and smooth and superior smooth. Like all of those are fine. I like their eco cardstock. I don't have any decks on it, but I got to feel it because I ordered a cardstock sampler from Make Playing Cards. So that's one that I would be interested in. Maybe making a deck with that eco cardstock someday would be interesting. Um, I'm not too picky. Like as long as I feel like it's not going to fall apart, and as long as the cards slide and move smoothly, then I'm pretty happy with cardstock, I would say. And things like gilding, I'm kind of take it or leave it. I prefer the more matte type of edging over the metallic, but that's not going to be a make or break thing for me. Increasingly, I am interested in, you know, prodding people towards more eco-friendly options for cardstock, recycled papers and things like this, I think would be really good to see more of. Next question, bags or boxes? I just want my decks to feel secure and safe. Um, I'm happy with a box like this Tarot of the Crystal World box has the finger cutouts. It's a sturdy two-piece box. It stays closed. It holds the cards well. The little booklet fits inside there comfortably. Like this, I would never feel like I needed to get other storage for, like a bag or anything like that, because this is perfect. It's easy to put on a shelf. I can put it in my bag without feeling like the cards are in danger. Things aren't wobbling around too much. That's perfect. If I'm going to buy something, I really like these. I'm not sponsored or anything, just to be clear. I really like these wraps by Ginkgo and the Crone on Etsy, and they're these kind of ones with um, space to do a reading on them, and then they wrap around. I wouldn't get these for like every deck in my collection because it is like something that takes up a little bit of space, but I really like these as a way to protect the cards. If something comes in a tuck box, I do also like to put it inside a bag. So this deck came with a bag, and I will put this inside as an extra protection for the cards. I wouldn't say I'm too picky on bags and boxes, really. I will buy a wrap bag or a drawstring bag, or I'll make a drawstring bag. I'm not very good at it, but I've made some good ones, I think. I will make or otherwise purchase a bag if whatever the cards came in, I feel like is inadequate. So if I get something from Make Playing Cards that just has plastic wrap on it or something, then I'll get a bag for that. Next question, how did you learn tarot or get into it? Um, well, I got my first deck at age maybe 13, 14, from my mom and my grandma, neither of whom read tarot, so I'm pretty sure that they went into the store and were like, it's purple. That's what we're going to pick. There wouldn't have been any consideration beyond that other than the fact that I was interested and they wanted to encourage that, which I feel infinitely thankful, that was the case. So I read from this for my family and my friends, and I had a book. I don't have the book anymore. These I was very happy to find were saved in a closet at my parents' house. The book, I have no idea where that would be, but I drew cards and read from the book, and that was that. As an initial place to start as a young person, I eventually found my way to Smith Waite and to Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork, and with that, I had Joan Bunning's book and the learntarot.com as a resource, and a couple of others, mostly book learning, I would say. And, from there I've branched out in all sorts of different directions to pip decks and Marseille and quite abstract things and exploring every which way that I can. So um, I don't remember the context of why I would have asked for this. Um, Certainly, card reading is a thing that I grew up aware of. Some of my grandmother's sisters were playing card readers, like by profession, so that's something that was familiar. But also, I didn't grow up with those aunties. Like they lived in another country. They're no longer with us. My grandma's in her late 90s. But why I wanted tarot specifically, I I couldn't tell you. It was a long time ago. But I got into it. I had runes back then too. No idea where those went. I made them out of rocks from the beach near my parents' house. I know nothing about runes at this point, but I had some in some sort of cheat sheet, I imagine. Um, but that never stuck in the way that tarot did. So, what is the best news in tarot world that you've heard lately? I did hear that um, Tarot for the Great Outdoors is getting reprinted with different cardstock. I think that that's great because I know that the current cardstock, which is very bendy, is really off-putting for a lot of people, and I feel like it's keeping people from the deck who would otherwise enjoy it. I'm okay with the cardstock. I'm thinking about backing it. I'm not sure, but it has held up to use, I will say. So I'm not clamoring to buy the new version, but I think that the Tarot for the Great Outdoors is a really good deck. And if it draws more people because the cardstock is different, I think that that's great news. Um, yeah, that's good tarot news. Okay. How many decks are on your to get list? I don't have a to get list. I have a to explore list, and I show it in my monthly updates and I keep it in my planner. Um, I will tell you how many are on the to explore list, except one of them I'm going to cross out because I know that I'm not going to get it. Okay, I'll update on that later. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 9 decks on my to explore list, 2 of which are forthcoming, not yet published. One of which is somewhere between the Kickstarter finished and is going to be available, but I don't think it is at the moment. Oh no, 3 of them are actually forthcoming. I want to see the Deviant Moon Oracle because I like the tarot, but I mean, I don't know that I'll get it. I don't have a to get list. Of all of these, Aquarius Rising Oracle by Charlie Claire Burgess, when it comes out, I will definitely get that. I don't know what else I'm going to get. Um, you know, I think on it for a long time. I tend to. Next question. If you could only keep 3 decks, which ones would you choose and why? I reject this question. Whoever is telling me that I'm only allowed to have 3 tarot decks is like getting dumped. So, no thanks. I know that's not the spirit of the question, but really, I'm gonna keep more than 3 decks. In a scenario that I can't possibly imagine where I was allowed to have 3 decks and no more, for like I cannot imagine what the circumstance would be. I think that my thought process would be something like I would want 1 Smith Waite influenced deck, 1 Pippish or Marseille deck, and 1 more kind of nature based, not so system based deck. But I'm not picking only 3. Next question. How does knowing tarot influence your everyday? Tarot is a part of my everyday. I read tarot for myself every day in the morning. Occasionally it's oracle, but typically my morning reading, kind of check in, what's up today and how am I going to navigate the day. That it tends to be tarot. Sometimes it's other things, but it tends to be tarot. Tarot has brought me people who I hope will be like absolute lifelong friends. And so that is a huge influence. Like there are people who are close friends that I value so much who are a part of my life, if not every day, then certainly very frequently, like people that I talk to very frequently who I have met through tarot. And that's a huge impact, right? Your friends are a huge impact on you. So like that is the big one. I would say as well that divination in general, maybe not just tarot, has given me a level of feeling like I can trust myself and feeling like I have good ways to make decisions, that allow for a particular kind of confidence that I don't know that I would have otherwise. I feel empowered by that. I feel like I trust myself and that relates to my divination practice in some way. And that is an everyday strength for me, for sure. I'm sure I could think of a lot more on how tarot influences me in my everyday if I sat here for a long time. Next question. If you could turn back time, would you have learned tarot in any other way? Um, I'm sentimentally attached to this because I'm pretty sure that my 96-year-old grandmother picked this. Um, so I wouldn't say that I would go back and change it. Was it a really weird deck, retrospectively to try to start with? Yes. Would I suggest that anybody pick this as their first deck? Fuck no. Like, this would be the last thing I would suggest as a first deck, actually. But, you know, I'm here. So how can it have been the wrong thing? So I wouldn't change that. I wish that I would have found diverse and particularly queer representing tarot decks much earlier. You know, Thea's Tarot is one of my favorites and is older than me by just a little bit. It was printed in 1984. If I could have started with that, or if after this, happy gift deck, I I could have gone to something like Thea's Tarot instead of feeling the need to go to the Rider-Waite Smith, I might have had fewer big long lapses and lulls in my learning. I feel like I would have had, more depth of interest and commitment in my tarot study if I had found decks that felt more comfortable for me more early in my life. And if I had found maybe tarot teachers or authors that were more relatable to me early in my life as well. Like, I think that those things make such a huge difference. So that I would change. Next up, what are your thoughts on Three of Swords? For me, the three has to do with growth, has to do with creation, has to do with, two things interacting in a way that makes a third thing that is distinct from them both. And in Swords, it's related to thoughts and the intellect and the mental, because it's the air suit. So I do prefer when it's not a heart that's impaled by three swords, because I do think that that is somewhat limiting. But I also accept that, the Smith-Waite deck is what it is. It is part of a kind of system of reading tarot. It's not going to make me not get a deck if that's the way the Three of Swords is, but I really like novel interpretations of the Three of Swords that make it not that. Next question, how many decks do you have right now? I keep a spreadsheet, so I do keep track. And right now, I have 110 tarot decks in my collection. And so that includes every tarot deck that I have, including like second copies. I don't have a lot of doubles, but I do have, for example, 2 copies of Naturescapes. I have like the Next World Tarot. I have the big version and the pocket version. So that 110 includes like all of that. Like the 2 copies of Naturescapes would count as 2. Like every physical deck is counted. Then I have another spreadsheet that includes other kinds of divinatory tools that are not tarot. And the total on that one is 72. So that includes other kinds of decks like Lenormand, which I don't have very many of at all. That includes OM decks, which like I have probably 5 copies of my own OM deck that I made, including kind of the early prototype, the final version, and some extras. So that's included. All of my Oracle decks are included in that number, as well as like sets of dominoes, geomancy sticks, um, things like that. The only things that are not included in those total numbers are like decks of playing cards that we use to play euchre and use only for that. Those don't count as divinatory tools because I don't use them in that way. So that's what I have. That's my collection. That also includes like of the 110 tarot decks. Like that also includes decks that I have in a bag to rehome that I'm definitely going to be gifting along or selling or passing along in some way, but they're still in my home and in my possession, so they're still in the spreadsheet. Next question. If you could befriend one person on Tarotube or in the tarot world, who would it be? I I think I'm too awkward for this question. Um, Tarotube friend crushes. I feel like there are several. Um, I will just say that there's lots of people on Tarotube who I would love to, you know, have a chat and a drink over Zoom with, for sure. Like, just to chat and get to know each other and talk about tarot in a non, you know, each other's comment section sort of a way. I like getting to know people around tarot. That's why I liked this tag. Let's be tarot friends, right? I will say, she's not with us anymore, but I would have loved to have been able to have a chance to have a conversation with Rachel Pollack. Not just because of Rachel Pollack's influence as a tarot author, or a deck creator or any of these things, but also like as a figure in queer and trans science fiction. Her work is also important to me, and I would have loved to have, gotten some kind of chance to have some wide-ranging conversation with her while she was here about, those different things. Last question. What is your favorite part of the day to do tarot? I would say morning and evening, but weirdly not in between. I do my daily reading is in the morning because then it's actionable throughout the day. And when I'm doing a reading like a new moon intention setting reading or a full moon reading or a birthday reading or a reading just on any kind of topic in my life where I'm reading for myself, it tends to be in the evening. Some of that is just the logistics of the fact that I have a day job. But I like reading in the evening, and maybe it's just, opening the window and seeing the moon and lighting candles and these kinds of things feel nice to me in the evening, so I like to read in the evening. In the afternoon, I'm more likely to do things like film Tarotube content if I'm off work, or maybe read a tarot book, things like that. These things are not hard and fast, but I tend to read tarot in the morning and the evening. That is it. That is the tag of Let's Be Tarot Friends by Tarot is Magic. Again, I'll link the original video below and timestamp. Thank you so much for watching. If you're still here, 41 minutes is not bad, for me, considering how many questions there were. So I feel good about that. I'll look forward to other VRs. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.